Well, welcome. Mike Florio here, CEO of Long Island Builders Institute. I'm joined today with Devin Kulka from the Kulka Group, who is our treasurer, I believe, this year.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome, Devin. And also Alex Lipsky from Lipsky Construction, who is our secretary this year. And we're just here today to talk about construction on Long Island in general, things that are going on. And we want to really address a lot of the misconceptions that are out there about the cost of housing. So what we hear all the time is developers are only building luxury housing, right? That's what people see. The issue really is that the cost of construction here is so high for numerous factors. So, both you guys being in the industry, can you just talk about some of the issues you deal with when going through construction? What are the cost drivers that are out there that really make building on Long Island so difficult to begin with, and the cost of construction so high? And Devin, we'll start over with you.
Yeah, so on Long Island, we are known for having a very rigorous approval process, right? Our approval process might be a year and a half, best case scenario, 2 years, 3 years, sometimes 40 years, as we know with our friend Peter Florio, right? So that adds a lot of risk, adds a lot of money to the deal. Additionally, insurance. We have the highest insurance costs across the entire country due to Scaffold Law. Right. Scaffold Law is a very antiquated law. It's been around for too long, and it makes our insurance premiums way higher than, say, New Jersey or Connecticut or any of the other states in the country.
Let's stick with Scaffold Law for a second, Alex. People think Scaffold Law, and they're probably thinking, New York City high-rises with all the scaffolding. That's really not what it's about. Can you talk a little bit more about Scaffold Law and how that relates?
Yeah, so the Scaffold Law, it's been an issue here for generations. It's not a recent thing, but we are looking at it in a way of trying to make it where it works with us and for us to navigate it correctly. The Scaffold Law is really just a workers' comp claim where the employee is able to sue the employer for any injury, and they will pretty much always win. And it's a backwards law where there's very little due process is allowed. It makes the cost of construction skyrocket in New York. In our market, we pay just under 3% for insurance. So 3%, let's use it as a round number. My friends around the nation are paying anywhere from 0.7%, 0.6%. So we're paying 3, 4, 5 times what our friends are paying around the nation.
That's an extra cost on top of everything else for basically the same insurance. And the Scaffold Law, the issue with it is that it's 100% liability on the employer's side of it. So, Devin, I believe you had an issue where someone came onto one of your job sites that wasn't even working there, right? And faked an injury.
Yeah.
And received a payout.
Yeah, I had somebody on camera walk over to our job site, didn't even go onto the property, just went on the sidewalk, lay down on the ground, and claim they fell off the roof. And sadly enough, they were given a 6-figure payout.
Oh my God.
Because it was easier to settle with this person than fight them. And I was not happy. I was not happy because that goes on my loss runs, right? And now my insurance premium, every time I renew, that's always going to go on our record. Even though I had it on camera, it was clearly fraudulent. There was no record of this person working for me or any of the subs. Yeah, it was a fraudulent case.
I mean, and that's something that's going out there right now with it, is that there are numerous examples of fraud in the system. People that are faking injuries. There's been a lot of media coverage and exposés done by, print and, news media out there. How do you protect yourself from something like that, Alex? What can you guys do to ensure that, these things don't happen?
How do we protect ourselves? The law is written in a way that we can't. The law is written in a way that the employee will always win those lawsuits, and the lobbyist organizations from the insurance companies make it so nobody at the state level is going to go ahead and pass this. It's working against the employers. Who pays for this? We pay for this, but really our developers and our landowners and the business owners that are trying to just build their business are paying for this. So how do we get around this? We get around this by really having some great safety procedures of how to enter into a job site, how to protect your job site. Unfortunately, this means that we have to have cameras on our job site and make sure that we have oversight and doing our due diligence to make sure that we are protected. But ultimately, we are seen as villains before we're seen as, it's guilty before proven innocent, unfortunately.
Right. And
I just want to touch
Yeah.
one more thing on the construction fraud. This is another means of organized crime. Oftentimes, the person who is seen on camera or the person who might be going to the hospital, they're not the ones behind it all. There are bigger groups that are behind them, making them go to do this, collecting money on their behalf. And there's doctors involved that are giving fake surgeries and fake documentations. It is a very sophisticated type of organized crime that is hurting our industry.
And
right
they're
now.
actually exploiting workers, right? Typically, they find migrant workers, all right, that come in. They say, "Hey, listen, we'll give you X amount of dollars, and you got to go do this." And they go and they either fake an injury or they get hurt. And this network of doctors and attorneys that are basically, organized crime backed, are having them do surgeries, spinal fusions and things like that, major surgeries that are above and beyond what's necessary. And it's all because they're going to receive a payout and they're going to get money. And the poor worker walks away with, maybe $10,000 or something like that. But, they've been maimed in the process. It's not worth it. So this is something we really need to crack down on. And, it's unlikely we can get anything done at the state level, unfortunately. But we're looking at both, federal legislation as well that will hopefully give some relief to this issue in this industry in this state. It's been going on for a long time.
It's a major issue for our industry. While the Long Island Builders Institute is going after this and trying to advocate this the correct way, we're joined by some other great organizations in New York State, in the city, that are also trying to navigate this correctly. I want to make something said very clearly. We absolutely want to make sure that if an employee is injured on our job site, they are protected and they get a payout. That's not what this is about. This is fraudulent claims. This is a law that is put in place where we lose every single time to that, and it is not fair to the contractors, the owners, and the developers of the project.
Well, this is a law that has been around since the 1800s, right? When you think of that picture on the guys doing the Empire State Building, eating their lunch, the famous picture that they're up there. Okay, there was no OSHA back then. There was no safety harnesses and stuff like that. I mean, can you guys just talk about what are the safety procedures you put in place on your job sites that are meant to protect the workers and make sure that these things don't happen?
Yeah, before anybody ever steps foot on our job site, right, they have to go through a very rigorous safety orientation. That is their first day. That's a non-negotiable. Part of that safety orientation takes into account rules and regulations of the site, right? JHAs, safety procedures, evacuation plans. Like, there's a lot that goes into making sure people are prepared to know how they work on that site.
It's funny that you brought up OSHA, because while OSHA is there to protect the worker, it doesn't protect the public. It doesn't, so when you ask, what do we make sure of to make sure that our employees are safe on a project, we look at everything comprehensively. We want to make sure that the job site has overhead protection. So not only are our employees safe, but the public walking by, we have job site fencing. So there is everything that Devin just brought up to things that we think of beyond that, just to make sure that, first of all, I am safe when I walk on the job site. The architect is safe when they walk on the stakeholders in a project are safe, but mostly our employees who are certified and trained. In the city, they have great protocols. They require a minimum of what is it up to these days? 62 hours for a senior, Yeah. So the SST cards are great for the city. That does not exist here on Long Island. To work here on Long Island, on most projects, you don't need any safety training, zero safety training. The state requires a minimum of 10 hours. I've taken the 10 hour, the 30 hour, I've taken 100 hours. There is so little information in that 10-hour course. You need to make sure that you are doing your due diligence.
Well, just I think it was a year or two ago, we worked with the unions on proposals to establish a minimum of an OSHA 30 safety course here.
I love
and,
that.
and a lot of the towns across Long Island it's been adopted. So that's a thing. Again, we want to make sure that our workers are protected and safe.
Usually that comes down to the size of the project. If it hits a certain dollar amount threshold or square footage, they'll require it. But the people that are most at risk, again, the highest at risk of fatality in OSHA standards is falls and struck by hazards. And a lot of that is our roofing companies, and they're working on smaller projects, and they are not protected under those same regulations. So we either need to have standards across the board and not this threshold matter, or we need to do a much better job of just educating the public the right way.
Mike, can you talk about our approach to potentially altering scaffold law on a federal level and how that might open up the doors on a state level?
Yeah, so there is some legislation out there. We've tried with the state for years, and it's really the trial lawyers have such a stranglehold, I think, on things that it's very difficult to break through or even get a conversation started. Until it's really broken, you're not going to see a change. So we've been working with federal legislation. There's a bill by Congressman Nick Langworthy, he's upstate representative here in New York, that would basically exempt the New York State scaffold law for any project with a federal nexus, whether it's a federal permit, federal funding that goes to it. So while it wouldn't directly translate to our industry per se, it would open the door to that conversation. And there's been studies when you look at bridges that link New York and New Jersey. The New Jersey side is less expensive because the insurance costs are much less expensive on that. If you paint the George Washington Bridge, for instance, the New Jersey side is half the price as the New York side it is. So there's hope that we can work through this federally and maybe get some relief, and maybe that opens a door to having a discussion here about changing the law in New York State. Again, we're the only state in the country that has this. It's been around since the 1800s, and it's time to do something about it. Because to get back, when we talk about the cost of construction here, all right, the median home price in Nassau County is $850,000 now. The median home price in Suffolk County is $750,000. When we talk to residents, elected leaders here, they come to us and say, "Well, why can't you guys just build something less expensive? Where's the starter home?" When you look at our land mass, okay, 85% of Long Island is zoned single-family homes. All right. So if you're going to go buy a half-acre parcel in Suffolk County, what are you paying? $4 for that? Okay, so you're in at $400,000 to do a bare bones 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. What's that going to cost you just in construction?
It's going to bring you right up to that 850 margin.
Right.
There's no way around it, especially because when we're talking about the scaffold law, it's not just affecting these large projects. It affects bathroom renovations. It affects these small houses, single-family houses as well. It's across the board. We're feeling the squeeze on not just the scaffold law, but every single thing with insurance, the cost of construction. It's all going up.
Yeah, so now you're at 850. That's just in your land and your construction cost. Then you throw in your soft costs and taxes, fees, insurance, permits. Maybe a little bit of a profit in there so you can, make a living and run a business. You're looking at $1 million for a new construction home.
Absolutely.
In today's world. There was just a thing about, the people in their 20s were able to buy a $750,000 home in Nassau County, and it was seen as like this, great success. We don't have interest rates in 3% anymore. We're in the sixes. There's still incredibly high demand here. So what are things that could, if we want to bring that cost down, what are some ideas out there that we can work on to help with that?
They're building a new center of commerce.
I'll just tell you, I was in Ronkonkoma the other night,
Yeah.
Great South Bay Brewery, Friday night. We were walking around there. That place was hopping. It was packed.
If you're looking for a real clear example of the future of what Long Island could look like, and I say that because I travel around the U.S., and every single emerging market community looks like Ronkonkoma.
Yeah.
It's phenomenal, and they're doing it in other areas of Long Island as well.
Well, I always say we can have nice things too. We have to, a lot of times you travel to other parts of the country, right? You travel to the South, travel to the Midwest, and you see these hubs that are built there, and you're like, wow, this is great. I'm outside, there's live music, there's a lot of activity and people. There's usually apartments or, housing in close proximity. There's just a good energy. People don't have to bring their car everywhere. They're walkable. And people come back and go, oh, well, we like that. We don't have enough of that here. And the places you see, the Mineolas, the Patchoggs, the Farmingdales that are thriving, around Konkoma in that area, why can't we have more nice things like that?
Long Island Suffolk County mostly exploded in the 70s. I would say the 40s, 50s was a lot of Nassau County, and then it came out and created the suburbs that are known for in the 70s. Mm-hmm. And back then, it was not uncommon to drive 20, 30 minutes to the closest Sears or Kmart. As Long Island grew and it grew more dense, you got to remember, we're landlocked here. We are an island, and a lot of the property out east is land preserved areas. Mm-hmm. So we're landlocked here. With the expansion in the 70s, we've grown in population, but not in housing. The only way to bring back the idea of a future for Long Island isn't to force people to buy these single family homes. And I say that because my friends are looking to move back to the community that they grew up in. They have their new family. They want to buy back into Suffolk County, and they're being pushed out because people are holding onto their real estate. There's people coming from outside and buying multiple real estate plots and pushing people out. The inventory demand is extreme right now. We're in a housing blight. So the only way around that is to have centers of commerce and housing like what's going on in Ronkonkoma.
Well, I mean, if you look at similar type counties to us, right? Either in New York, look at a Westchester, all right? If you look in like a Virginia, Fairfax County, when you look at the difference, their housing stock is much more diversified. So whereas we have about 20% rental, they have close to 40. And what I like to say is that our life cycle of housing here is broken, where we do not have entry level price points and options for young people that are coming out of school and grew up here and they want to live here, and then seniors who want to downsize on the other end. We do great, extraordinarily well in the single family market for families of, and particularly school age children. But on either end of that, we fail. And we need to be able to keep the seniors that have lived here, that have raised their families here, that want to keep their families here and be around their family, but just don't have a place to go. As you said, they're house rich. They're sitting on a $800, $900 million home. They don't need the 4 bedrooms and 3 baths and half-acre property and the swimming pool and cutting the lawn every week. They want to go to a more active lifestyle community where they can be around friends and family and stuff like that. So it's really a need to diversify and have a lot of options in our housing here, which will help us grow.
And we're losing, senior citizens to other states. We're losing young professionals to other states, and we're not offering them that live, work, play environment or enough of it. I just had a female in my company who's moving, and she had a very difficult time finding an apartment. And this is a great tenant with a great job who should be able to find one of her liking easily, but instead she reached out to me to see if I can help her because it was so difficult. That shouldn't be a problem on Long Island, and it really is.
Just to double up on that, we're talking about currently well-educated, white-collar position jobs that cannot find housing here. What's even worse than that is the workforce. The limitations of workforce housing or entry level in communities that can support all the jobs on Long Island is a blight right now. There is nowhere near the amount that we need. There's small select communities, and those are getting infiltrated and pressurized every single week. People want to flip their community into the betterment, but that's pushing the workforce housing
we're
out.
seeing it, there are a lot of employers that have reached out to us and said, hey, I can't find housing for, nurses and doctors that are working in the hospitals here, okay? They have to come from much further away than than is, ideal. There are teachers, first responders, police officers, people that can't afford to live in the communities they work, especially out east end of Long Island. That is a major problem. The trade parade that you have every day of people having to come from west to east, clogging up the east end roads there. People in those communities that, are in the service industry there that feed that whole Hamptons area cannot afford to live in the communities they work. I mean, it's a major problem that we need to address.
The other thing about the rentals is for a while they just had a bad stigma, and I think we've started to get away from that, and it's an awful stigma that people that rent are not contributing to the community, right? They are contributing tax dollars. They are shopping at the local stores, right? The other thing about that is the younger generation not necessarily wants to just go buy a house, right? The younger generation is very happy living in that work, live, play environment, renting an apartment, and then traveling the world, right? Using some of their money to go see and experience other places.
Well, I think that's a big thing. There's an article I was reading this weekend that people aren't getting married anymore. People are not having as many kids anymore. To what you said, people are more focused on experience now rather than possessions. So there's a change in the mindset as the generations sort of evolve here, and people may not want to buy homes going forward. They may just want to be, hey, I'm going to live here and then I'm going to move there, or you move up. But you're right. There is a stigma that goes back a long ways of the renters are not part of this community. They're transient. I would argue that renters in many cases have a lot more disposable income in some of these communities that we're seeing, that they're putting that into the local economy, which is great. I mean, anytime you see one of these developments built, you see the periphery of what changes in that area because you have more activity. You have a lot of income coming into that. So it's not the same. And these are not, no one's building a lot of crappy housing here. That's for sure. I mean, these are high-end, well amenitized pools, clubhouses, fitness centers, yoga rooms, urgent care and stuff right on site. I mean, these are highly amenitized buildings, and that's why they charge a premium. And people, maybe they want to spend $3,000, $4,000 a month rather than the $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 a month you would have to spend on a mortgage for a home in the $700,000, $800,000.
And back to economics, right? Across Long Island, these buildings are 95% occupied, 98% occupied. If the supply was meeting demand, it wouldn't be as filled as they are, right? These buildings are being built, and we built 55 units in East Patchogue. Mm-hmm. We had 800 applicants day one. 800 applicants for 55 units. It's telling you something. We don't have enough housing.
The demand is there.
We have some fantastic universities here, some great schooling opportunities. And what we see is that after they're done with school, the students in their first position cannot afford to live here. So we're seeing an exodus of great talent that we are cultivating here on Long Island leave the island because of the cost of housing, because of the cost of even just commercial and everything they need for day to day. We need to change that.
So, the school districts have really been engaging in development issues across Long Island at a more aggressive pace. And, when you look across Long Island, you see that school enrollment has declined for most districts, very few exceptions there. And the money they get from the state has increased. They've seen record state aid increases. And our taxes, everyone on Long Island complains about the taxes. Taxes are too high, taxes are too high. But every May, very small percentage of the population goes out and they vote for the school budget almost overwhelmingly. And if it's up to the tax cap, 2%, 3%, 4%, it usually passes with no problem. So then when we come in and we say, hey, we want to build more housing here, and there may be 30, 40 kids, usually not even the case in these places, that may enter the school district. And in many cases, they may be kids that are already in that school district coming in. There's always this fight about the schools. They don't get, I joke, the schools are the only business out there that doesn't want more customers. So, what can we do about that, especially when they reject assistance that may come from the IDAs here to make these projects feasible? Without that assistance, capital is mobile. It will go other places. So if that money doesn't come here, these developments won't get built, and we're going to still have this housing issue. So, what do we say to the school districts and people that say, don't give them any assistance and we don't want any more?
We don't get involved in how they operate their business. They shouldn't get involved in how we operate our business. I think the reality is the majority of all the school districts on Long Island have been losing a significant amount of students. And there is data that has shown that for every 10 units that are built, one student goes into the school district, right? Mm-hmm. There is no overburdening of the school system, and we have to stop that narrative because it's feeding the fire of the NIMBYism.
Yeah.
We can't attack IDAs. Without IDAs, none of these projects ever get done. We must have those benefits just to make the project come to fruition. People have this idea that the developer is not paying taxes if they're given IDA benefits. That's not it at all. Most times, the property is going to pay the same taxes, if not more, day one, and increase over time.
People don't understand it's a phase-in of the tax.
Correct.
Right? It's always reported as, the developer got X million dollars in benefits. I always joke. There's no money exchange. There's no Brinks truck that's backing up and saying, here's your millions, good luck. It's, in most cases, if the current use of the property was generating X, okay, the newer use is going to generate 10X. That 10X doesn't happen on day one. It gets phased in over a certain period. So your taxes are always going to be there to cover any additional cost of what the school children would be bringing in.
That's correct. And they call it incentives for a reason. It's an incentive for that developer to want to build in this community to allow for this project to be in this community long term. Now, the IDA benefits have consequences as well. If they do not maintain a certain level of Long Island employees, local community employees, they will have consequences of the IDA grant. So it's a grant that's put there to incentivize a great developer. And we've seen some great national developers come to Long Island just because of these grants. And now they're here long term to support the growth of Long Island.
Yeah. I mean, we talk about development dollars going other places. I've talked to developers here who said, I go to Georgia and I tell them I want to spend $100 million in their community on a project. You get a call from the mayor. You get a call from the building department. You get a call from other people. Hey, we're rolling out the red carpet for you. What can we do? Here, sometimes it's like, I want to spend $100 million in your community. You get, well, I don't know. You got to go talk to this person, then go talk to that person, and then talk to this person, and then come back to me and say, well, we don't really want $100 million. Well, maybe $70 million we'll take. And then you got to go do this and this. And that process just takes so long.
Let me correct you there. And I'm not correcting. It's just every single Long Island developer wants to build on Long Island. They don't want to go anywhere else. But by force, by the NIMBYism, by the communities and the bad rep that renting has had on Long Island, which is we need to change the education on that. They've been forced to look at South Carolina and Texas and Georgia. Every single major developer on Long Island is already developing, they're looking, or they've done the financial model elsewhere off Long Island. And they are rolling out the red carpet, not putting up red tape. And that's the big change on Long Island.
So let's talk about that. Both of you guys here, all right, your father, Jack, started the business that you're running today, right? You're second generation. Your father, Barry, started the business that you're running. You guys both grew up here. I assume you want to stay here and continue to work here. What are the impediments that you see? Because we hear more and more people looking out of state that they're saying, you know what, it's too difficult to work here. There's too many impediments to doing business here. It's not worth it for me. I could get a better return on my investment. I could have a better lifestyle if I did work in other states. what is that? What is the analysis you go through when you think about projects and say, hey, how much work do I want to do on Long Island, and where else can I go?
I could do 2 projects in one time period outside of Long Island. And the same, I could do maybe half a project on Long Island, right? The time it takes to do one project on Long Island, I could potentially do 2 or 3 projects off Long Island. So we've strongly looked at it, right? We were going to do a project in King of Prussia. They said we can get you a building permit in 6 to 8 months. 6 to 8 months. That would never happen on Long Island, right? So obviously, I want to be on Long Island. My family's here. I have 1 child, soon to be 2 small children here.
Getting closer every day.
Getting closer every day. I truly love Long Island. Like I'm Long Island's biggest fan, but I'm being forced into other markets, and it's sad. It really is sad because I love it here.
What about you, Alex?
Long Island's incredible. Long Island was incredible, and Long Island will continue to be incredible if we can get through a few of these housing crisis issues, if we can get through the development issues. Again, most of Long Island was built in the 70s. It was built by a previous generation. But as we have this new generation of business owners, community members coming here, we have the opportunity to see that we're here for a reason. We're staying for a reason. My wife and I travel a lot. We very clearly could see that there's developing areas of this country which are very attractive to young families. I come from the South Shore. She comes from the North Shore. We have family all over. We stay here because of our family, because of our friends, our connections, and what Long Island has to offer. The beaches, the community, the availability of New York City, Montauk. This is where I want to raise my family, my great young family. I want them to be here in this community. So while we have looked elsewhere, while we have seen the shiny light and elsewhere, this is where I want to be.
Yeah, I mean, I think any family or any person that has looked elsewhere, right, has done the calculation in their head, is it worth me staying here? And sadly, I think a lot of people are deciding it's not. They're going other places.
I think they're forced.
Well,
they
they're forced,
try
right.
to
They want
buy
to stay
and
here.
they can't even enter the market.
Yeah.
So you're correct.
Right.
If it wasn't for my child and my second child coming, my mom told me she'd be moving to South Carolina.
Yeah.
Like, thanks, Mom. I matter too, but
I asked
no.
my father the same question. I said, Dad, do you want me to help you find a place in Florida? He goes, I'm staying with my grandchildren. I'm going to be here on Long Island until, yeah.
But my mom's sister down in South Carolina, my cousins down in South Carolina, my mom, she's gonna go eventually. I know it. It's just too difficult here on Long Island.
You know, that's something great to bring up. And I know you talked about the senior citizens that are buying some of these rental communities. When I talk to the developers on Long Island that are building these fantastic facilities, some of the unknown consequences of building them are these snowbirds. They did not they thought they were building first family housing for renters. A lot of what they're actually renting to are snowbirds that do not want to cut their lawn anymore, that do not want to worry about their utility bills, that just have a place here on Long Island where they could see their grandkids and then jet down to Florida, right out of Islip Airport whenever they want. And it's a great relationship that they have.
You know, the workforce here on Long Island and in the country in general, right? We're seeing the acceleration of AI that is taking over a lot of things. I mean, if you guys are both younger and I'm sure embracing some AI, but what do you see happening to the workforce here as we start to age out? You know, we see contractors, plumbers, electricians, carpenters. Is the next generation stepping up to fulfill those roles? And is there an opportunity now where, AI could be replacing a lot of white collar jobs? You know, I saw the guy who started Uber said a few weeks ago that the next generation, it's going to be the electricians and the plumbers that are the millionaires out there. You know, can you talk a little bit about that and what you see?
You know, they're saying that very creatively for a reason. One, I truly believe them. I think a qualified, really good plumber and electrician, first of all, I value them tremendously today, and I will be valuing them tremendously tomorrow. But they're being very creative because they are in a workforce blight on their AI facilities. They're trying to find qualified workforce, and they're finding that because everybody was told to go to college and to get a 4-year degree or 4 years of debt in order to get a white-collar job, that's what we were told and sold on for many years. But what I'm finding is most of the workforce that we're missing out on are the hands-on people, the plumbers, the electricians, the roofers, the people that know the trade and know very well how to navigate every single situation of how we build this island. Now, as AI comes more into this, you're going to see less and less white-collar jobs and more blue-collar jobs, but it's going to be the qualified blue-collar employees that are going to be doing very well.
Yeah, we're losing our workforce. The baby boomers are retiring, and there's not enough young professionals that are going into the trades, right? I hope that this AI movement pushes people back into the blue collar trades, right? And it's so necessary, and it's such a skill set that I think people are starting to value more, right? It was always, go to high school, go to college, get out of college with a ton of debt, and go find a job, right? Now it's becoming more and more acceptable, and people are actually seeing the large benefits of getting right into the workforce and starting to learn day one rather than go through 4 or 5 years of incurring debt.
I mean, to go to a 4-year university right now and get spend hundreds of $1,000s on a degree that may not give you a job, 5-10 years down the road, you might be replaced with AI. And to be saddled with that debt, that also affects your ability to do the things we talked about, buying a home and, raising a family. So, reversing the stigma that's been there was like, why are you going into the trades? Something's wrong with you. No, it's a viable option right now to a quality middle-class life you could take on.
The 4-year degree that I have, it's part of who I am. It's part of my character, everything there. But really who I am in this industry is from my hands-on experience in this industry. I didn't learn any of this from my 4-year degree, maybe some accounting tricks, but everything since then has been hands-on experience.
So you guys were talking about finding qualified contractors, right? So one of the things we see out there right now is that there's a lot of home remodeling going on, all right? Because people are stuck or locked into 3%, 2% mortgages from 5-6 years ago that they can't move into a new home. It doesn't make sense for them to go to a 6% rate. So they're choosing to remodel. And when they do, they're spending tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars. There are a lot of guys out there right now that advertise on Facebook, okay, or flyers in the door that make these big promises and give you a low rate. So someone comes in and says, "Hey, I can redo your bathroom for $10,000." That he did Mrs. Smith down the block, and she said on Facebook, "Oh, he was great." And now you go get another bid from a contractor that's properly licensed, properly insured, pays their workers the right way, and their cost is $18,000 to do it, right. Now the homeowner says, "Well, $10,000 versus $18,000, I'm going to go with the $10,000 guy. It's going to be the same job." What do homeowners need to be worried about when you use someone that, may not be qualified or comes through sort of untraditional means of recommendation?
Well, recommendation is probably paramount. I think there's no better lead source than the mom Facebook groups. As long as you have a good, this person did this the right way, they're very good at what they do. That's something to be said. But I want to just really put out there that contractors in general have a terrible reputation. We have for generations. Contractors, just by our industry, are known for taking advantage, and it comes down to the cost of construction. But as we've talked about today, the cost of construction is not necessarily in our control. We are able to control the items that we absolutely can control. But when it comes to the insurance and the cost of goods, we're not making this up. Now, if you have a homeowner or a business owner that's looking solely at price and not the value, you will be able to find a cheaper solution. I guarantee you'll be able to find a cheaper solution. However, is that the right contractor for your job? I absolutely think your project will cost more on the back end
In the long run, you're right. It's
Absolutely.
the quality of work. And, if something goes wrong, then the headache that comes with it and the cost to fix it. As you said, the cost of everything is just through the roof, whether it's, lumber, sheetrock, materials,
We don't dictate those
cabinetry,
prices.
right, countertops, appliances. I mean, that's all out of our control. So you're paying a lot more for a lot less today than you were maybe 5 years ago. So
Absolutely.
he always goes, well, you did so and so's project 5 years ago, and it was this amount. You know what? That price is maybe doubled over the past 5 years.
And those are industry standards that are coming down nationally. We are not in control of any of that.
So people always ask, why can't you guys just build more housing? Just, address the supply and demand, just build more housing. It's a very complex issue. So again, most of the land here is zoned single family that's out there. We don't want to continue the sprawl by just building on every green space. We want to preserve the great parts of Long Island, have our open space. But the fact is, a lot of the areas don't have the infrastructure in place to support additional housing. So, can you just talk about what's the infrastructure needs that have to go on before you can even think about starting to build?
You need sewer treatment plants and you need sewer lines outside of these properties in order to be able to develop housing, right? If you want to follow where development is going, you could follow where the next sewer line is being installed. And our great county executive continues to preach the need for more infrastructure and more sewer lines in Suffolk County. But without it, you're not going to be able to build enough housing to meet the demand.
Mike, the towns only care about 3 Ps: the people, the poop, and the parking. And if you look at each one of when we come to a community, where are the people going? Where is the infrastructure? Is it in place? And not just the sewer lines, but also if we're going for an all-electric mandate, can the grid handle that? And I've heard many times, not necessarily. So if we're going to catch up to that, we need to catch up to that today before we pass the legislation that requires that. And then the parking. As you go further west, we know that parking is a major issue. So they care about the density of how many people are coming to Long Island. But if you go further east, the question was raised of why don't we just build in these vast landscapes that exist out east? Those landscapes are preserved because the water table on Long Island needs to replenish, the aquifer reservation. It's an area for refuge of Long Island to make sure that our aquifer is replenished in a way that could feed the rest of Long Island. So if we're not building on existing land, on land that's zoned appropriately, we need to rezone it. We need the community to understand that we're trying to bring positive development and this NIMBYism. And I bring that up because my friends from around the nation have never heard the word NIMBYism. It doesn't exist.
Come here for a bit. You'll see it in practice.
They want the positive development that we're trying to bring to Long Island, but people think of us as a negative when we're actually a positive for the community.
Do you see opportunities? We talk about what are the uses out there, right? There's open space. Okay, there is land that's zoned residential. There are retail and industrial. As Amazon continues to grow, as more and more people, I would say, shop online, and we see these strip malls that are delinquent. The place has the Chinese and the pizza and the dry cleaner, and they're kind of run down. Are those opportunities to redevelop areas? We're looking in Melville right now, where there's large office buildings that have kind of like gone past their usefulness and are not as filled anymore. Looking to put mixed use there, and including housing. Other opportunities that you guys see out there on Long Island where things can be reimagined.
Governor Hochul has allocated a tremendous amount of money towards the development of Long Island, and then it's out of our hands. When these local communities come back and they say, not here, not here, it's coming down from the top that these are needed, and the positive development that could happen here is tremendous. We talked about having to go elsewhere to find great communities. That could be here on Long Island. Having the downtown Melville area that we're trying to create could be amazing for Long Island. These future communities, and I say future because they're not past generation areas. This is my family, my future generation that's going to benefit from these amazing new downtowns, and I'm very excited about it.
We're involved in 2 projects right now where there's an existing retail strip, and we're going to build apartments on top of the existing retail strip. Mm-hmm. And there's no better way to support call it a semi-struggling strip of stores than to give shoppers, right above you. Those people that are going to move in and live there, they're going to walk downstairs, they're going to go to the deli, they're going to get their hair cut, they're going to get their nails done. Like, there's no better way to support the mom and pop industries of Long Island than to build apartments right there.
Right. People don't understand that you need to have the density of the housing that's there and local to feed those retail establishments, and that's what makes it thrive.
My wife grew up in an area where it was a mile to get from her house to the local convenience store. We bought my house because it was walking distance from the local convenience store. Yesterday, we walked to downtown Sayville, that had a great Spring Fest going on. We want walkable communities that everybody is going upwards and accelerating each other. It's fantastic.
And same thing with me and my wife yesterday. We're walking around Bayshore, in downtown Bayshore, right? The day before that, my son is with my father-in-law walking around Babylon, downtown Babylon, right? People want these walkable communities.
Can you guys just talk about your involvement in Long Island Builders Institute, LIBI? I've been CEO here now for this is my 4th year. You guys have been members for a long time, but now are in the leadership here. We've pitched it as an advocacy group, and that's really what we were founded on, is to be an advocate for the industry. And there's many things that go along with that, whether working in the federal, state, and local levels to improve the building processes here. We do events over the course of the year that bring our community together, that builds relationship and networking. But, in your time being here as a member and now in a leadership position, what is the best attributes that LIBI has, and what do we offer people in your profession?
So I'm in LIBI for close to a decade now, and not only is it the largest trade organization in the state of New York, it is a community of people that are moving the industry together in the right direction, right? We are a lobbying organization first, and we are a community of people that are advocating for what's good for our industry. We're fighting what's bad for our industry, and without LIBI, our industry may die. It is so important, whether you are a builder of a home remodeler, or you are building, 100, 200, 300 apartments, or you are an industrial builder. LIBI is here to advocate on your behalf.
The Long Island Builders Institute preserves the right of our developers. And it's not that we're trying to take advantage. We're trying to just preserve the rights that exist and make sure that our developers have a clear path to successful building on Long Island so we can have positive progress. What does LIBI do, and what really is LIBI? I think LIBI, not only in their preservation of the builders' rights, it also has a great membership behind it. So over 750 members of LIBI. When you see, there's a qualification process to become a LIBI member. You have to be vetted, and you have to have somebody that recommends you to the organization. Having the LIBI logo as a vendor, as a subcontractor, as a builder, as a developer, is a logo that says you're in good hands. This is a good contractor. They're here to do the right thing.
What would you say to someone who's out there? A lot of times people say, "Well, listen, it's only for the only for the big guys, right? I'm a smaller contractor or associate member. It doesn't fit me." What would you say to them as why they should get involved?
If you are a builder, if you are in the construction industry of any size, any nature, and you are not in the Long Island Builders Institute, you're doing a disservice to the industry, and you're doing a disservice to yourself. And being part of this community will open up so many doors, but it will give us the numbers that we need to really help bring change and to help our industry here on Long Island.
As a builder, multi-generational builder, my reputation only goes so far. LIBI covers the rest. When I tell a new developer, a mom and pop that's looking to do a project, and they say, "What are your credentials?" I say, I'm a secretary on the executive board of the Long Island Builders Institute. Any idea of qualifications or if they're in good hands is squashed in that moment. I will say every person that I've met in LIBI, whether it be a small vendor, large supplier, subcontractor, builder, developer, is there for a reason. They're there for the betterment of Long Island. They are there to have a brighter future. They are there to build Long Island.
As the leader of this pristine organization that is influencing change on Long Island, why should somebody join this group?
Listen, the Long Island Builders Institute is the largest home building trade organization in New York State. We've been around since 1941. We currently have over 720 members, a combination of builders, big builders, small builders, developers, single-family builders, remodelers, and all of our associate members that work in the home building industry. That strength enables us to go into local communities, into the state, into the federal government, and advocate for change and advocate for things that make this industry thrive and make it easier to do business here on Long Island and New York State. The more numbers we have and the strength behind us gives us more power to enact change and make things better. So I think that being a part of the industry, if you're in the industry, being a part of this organization is essential. And it will provide numerous benefits to you as well, as far as education, as far as networking, as far as learning best practices from peers that are out there. I mean, this is a very collaborative group. I think if you're experiencing an issue, someone else is experiencing that issue as well, and you guys can kind of troubleshoot as to how to best to get things done. So if you're interested, go on www.libi.org. There's an application there. You can fill it out. You can talk to anyone on our staff. But I think there's a great benefit to being a part of this organization that's been around for 80-something years.